your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, I'm Jeanette Roche. Thanks for joining us for a look at what made headlines in Alberta this week. The City of Calgary has voted to repeal its single-use plastics bylaw. City officials say effective immediately, business owners will no longer have to charge a minimum fee for new paper and reusable shopping bags and provide shopping bags or foodware accessories by request only. They say City Council's vote only impacts the City of Calgary bylaw. The federal government's single-use plastics rule and regulations still apply. When it comes to crime here in southern Alberta, the RCMP say rural crime has actually decreased. They say from January to March, compared to the same period last year, there have been 76 fewer persons crime offenses, 213 fewer property crimes, and 373 less total criminal code offenses. They say that break and enters have dropped 18.4%, motor vehicle thefts have decreased 21.9%, and theft under $5,000 has decreased 17.7%. Officials with the RCMP say these stats show the great work police are doing to combat rural crime. Emergency Preparedness Week kicked off nationally on Monday. It serves as an opportunity to remind Canadians to get prepared for future emergency situations. Here in Lethbridge, Chief Fire Marshal Troy Hicks stressed the importance of having a 72-hour emergency kit on hand.
Is just reminding people about that, the importance of a 72-hour emergency kit, not even just for floods or whatever. We also recommend it for people that in the event of having a fire, a structure fire in their home, they could be displaced. Having those kits is an amazing thing with the medications, with phone lists, with all that stuff. It's very important, and it just helps ease the stress after having like a structure fire and people losing items, maybe being taken out of their homes. But yet by having a lot of this other stuff, it does help to kind of continue on and just get back to normal once we do have an event like that.
The city has some planned events to support Emergency Preparedness Week, including a chance to get your hands on that 72-hour emergency kit free of charge.
We have a draw for a 72-hour kit, so one of the consistent messages that you'll hear through Emergency Planning Week kind of nationally is have your 72-hour kit prepared. So we have a draw for a 72-hour kit. We have several engagement opportunities that were in the news release, so you can come down and visit us, talk some emergency planning, emergency preparedness, and then we'll have social media going out every single day.
The campaign this year is Be Prepared, Know Your Risks. It encourages everyone to understand the risks in their area and learn what action they can. I'm going to do this again. Sorry. The campaign this year is Be Prepared, Know Your Risks. It encourages everyone to understand the risks in their area and learn what action they can take to better protect themselves and their families. Well, in an effort to conserve water and reduce water consumption by 20% by the year 2030, Lethbridge city officials say they are taking proactive steps to reduce consumption. They say this year they are hoping to cut water use by 10% through various measures. That includes cutting back how often fleet and transit vehicles are washed, adjusting sweeping practices to reduce water use, flushing hydrants only as needed, reducing water usage when washing bridges and signs, and turning off decorative fountains when water restrictions are in place. Officials say other departments, including Parks and Recreation, will also cut back on managing irrigation and maintenance of green spaces. The city of Lethbridge recently received a shipment of top asphalt from their local suppliers, which kicked off the start of pothole filling season.
Last year we've got over 900 service requests for potholes. We anticipate it will be pretty similar this year. We already have 350 service requests in the queue, and as I said, we are working slowly to address all of those.
Well, the town of Fort Macleod has a new councillor. The town held a by-election on Monday, and the winner was Jamit Patel. Patel won with 168 votes. The runner-up was Sydney Tobler with 106 votes. Voters went to the polls to replace the vacant seat left by Marco van Hugenbos, who stepped down earlier this year after facing criminal charges for his involvement in the 2022 Coutts border blockade. After the break, the crime that puts Canada's relationship with India on shaky ground. Now 3 men in Edmonton face charges for the murder of a Sikh activist. We'll be right back. Police in Calgary say multiple people have been arrested following a pro-Palestinian protest at the University of Calgary late Thursday night. In a statement, Calgary police say they were notified around 6:30 p.m. about an encampment protest on the campus, which grew to 150 protesters at its peak. After a few hours, police say they had encouraged about 60 protesters to leave. Around 11:15 p.m., police say the remaining protesters were removed by arrest, with a number of people facing charges expected to be released this weekend. Throughout the situation, police say projectiles were thrown their way, which at one point led to officers using non-lethal munitions. It was one of several protests on academic campuses in Canada and the United States in response to Israel's offensive in Gaza. 3 men living in Alberta have been charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder of Sikh activist Harpreet Singh Nijjar. The killing last June caused friction between the Canadian and Indian governments after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said there was credible intelligence India may have been involved. Indian government officials denied the claim.
Through complex investigative techniques and tremendous support from the community, we were able to gather significant evidence that led us to the individuals that were responsible for this homicide. I'm here today to announce that we arrested and charged 3 individuals for first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder in relation to Harpreet Nijjar's homicide. The following 3 individuals were charged for this homicide. 22-year-old Garn Brar, who's an Indian national, who is residing in Edmonton, Alberta. 22-year-old Kamalpreet Singh, who is an Indian national, who is also residing in Edmonton, Alberta. 28-year-old Garnpreet Singh, who is also an Indian national, residing in Edmonton, Alberta. We will be disseminating photos of these accused men in hopes of any information in relation to their presence in Surrey during the time of the offense.
Nearly 50% of the wildfires burning across the country are in Alberta and British Columbia, according to officials. Alberta Forestry and Parks Minister Todd Loewen says technology is also helping emergency officials to keep on top of the fires and where they are and where they may break out next.
Our fire weather monitoring system, for instance, allows Alberta wildfire staff to actively track temperature, relative humidity, precipitation, and wind direction and speed throughout the forest protection area. This helps us stay on top of wildfire danger and plan for elevated wildfire risk in certain areas. Budget 2024 also provides funding for upgrades to this fire weather monitoring system, ensuring optimal wildfire response now and for years to come.
It appears the Alberta government is backing down on its controversial Bill 20. The bill would see the provincial cabinet have the power to fire municipal councillors and mayors and interfere in elections. It would also force amendments or repeal bylaws the province did not like. The former mayor of Lethbridge, Chris Spearman, says the province is playing a dangerous game by overreaching into municipalities, and it's more beneficial when governments work together and not against each other.
When I was the mayor, we accessed federal funding to expand our industrial park. And if we didn't have that kind of access support from the federal government, we would not have been able to attract Cavendish to our city. We would not have been able to enhance and modernize our airport. There are numerous other capital projects that we were able to do in the city of Lethbridge without raising municipal taxes because we got federal funding support.
A union boss here in Alberta has come out swinging against NDP leadership hopeful Naheed Nenshi. Ricky Brar, who is the Unifor Local 4001 president, says when Nenshi was the mayor of Calgary, he betrayed workers and therefore he will not be supporting Nenshi's leadership bid. In a statement, Brar says back in 2019, quote, Nenshi's request to the UCP government to amend the Alberta Labor Relations Code specifically to facilitate the privatization of public services by stripping away successor rights is nothing short of a betrayal. He says Mr. Nenshi's compass points to convenience rather than conviction, a concerning trait for someone who aims to lead this province, end quote. On the other side of the break, we delve into why survey data on the Alberta pension plan is not yet being released. We'll be right back.
Super controversial, obviously, and the provincial government is backed down to some extent. What they've said is, look, we've heard that this is controversial, and we're willing to take suggestions on amendments to the legislation.
As mentioned earlier in our program, the United Conservative Party appears to be backing down on the controversial Bill 20, which in part looks into allowing the provincial government to fire municipal councillors. Our legislative reporter and correspondent for the National Post says it's not surprising this potential bill led to uproars by municipal governments. Here is Tyler Dawson with BCN's Hal Roberts.
They're saying, look, we're a third level of government. Our councillors are elected by the people of wherever, so are the mayors. We are representing their will with these bylaws we're passing. And so they're saying, well, look, so why should the provincial cabinet be allowed to put a stop to that or get rid of these people that have been chosen by local voters? So super controversial, obviously, and the provincial government is backed down to some extent. What they've said is, look, we've heard that this is controversial, and we're willing to take suggestions on amendments to the legislation. Now, the provincial government, Rick McIver, the municipal affairs minister, they have said that these are the sorts of powers they're reserving for extenuating circumstances. They're perhaps not likely to come fire Mayor Amarjeet Sohi or Mayor Jyoti Gondek because they're more progressive politicians. They'd be looking at some sort of malfeasance and things like that. But still, you can still understand why local politicians would not be super keen on this level of scrutiny. And of course, the other side of it is the UCP, the Conservatives, are unlikely to be in power forever in the provincial legislature. So what do you do if the New Democrats come to power and all of a sudden you have a bunch of Conservative mayors butting heads with them? So super controversial. I think we're going to keep hearing about this because not only is it really interesting, but it's also just, every mayor in the province is mad about it. I don't know if there's any mayor or councillor who would support such a thing. So it's a really, really interesting sort of intergovernment dynamic. And for once, the UCP is not just fighting with Ottawa.
It's funny, you reminded me of that recall legislation that, Landon Johnston, I believe, that Calgary businessman, he ended up getting, around 75,000 signatures, a far cry from the 500,000. But he says it still sends a powerful message to Mayor Jyoti Gondek in Calgary and City Council.
Exactly. And, and that recall legislation has been used. It was used in one or two much smaller municipalities than Calgary. So that, there is sort of some of these other democratic mechanisms for removing politicians if they go too far. But of course, that's, I think, a little bit different than cabinet making that decision.
Tyler, the Alberta government is looking at overhauling our province's auto insurance program. It released 2 studies and is doing a public consultation on what Albertans are looking for when it comes to our auto insurance. What did the studies reveal?
Well, basically, they looked at what some of the options might be. And there are essentially 3 options, which are options that other provinces have. Alberta has a fully private auto insurance scheme. Quebec has a mixed private-public scheme. BC has a public scheme. I think Saskatchewan and Manitoba might have public auto insurance as well. And so this all sort of goes back to this idea that Alberta has really, really expensive auto insurance compared to other places, that it's, there's reports every once in a while saying it's, among the most expensive in the country. So this is, looking at the affordability crisis. Where can the government sort of step in to reduce expenses for people in the province? And this is one of the things they're looking at. So they've also announced a freeze on the auto insurance rate hike. I think about 3.5% will be the cap put on that. But it seems to be for good drivers is sort of what they've hinted. So I guess we'll see perhaps what that means.
We're still awaiting a survey information on the Alberta pension plan, Tyler. Reporters have been fighting via access to information legislation, but to no avail. The UCP says that Albertans would walk away with, what, 53% of the CPP?
That was their initial sales pitch. Yeah, last fall it must have been when they came out with that big report saying if Alberta left the CPP, took our money with us, we'd have like 53% of it, and it would be, a very robust pension fund. Of course, this was super controversial. The NDP jumped all over it. Both federal Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre and federal Liberal Party leader Justin Trudeau have said no, please don't leave the CPP. This, we're stronger together, all that sort of stuff. And the UCP's, wouldn't say they've backed off of it, but it certainly has not taken up that much of their time in the last few months because it is really controversial. It's not necessarily a massive vote getter or winner, but there's been this attempt by reporters to get, basically more information. What information is the government receiving from Albertans and what are they doing with that information? And it's just, they haven't released this stuff. There's various exceptions. We don't need to get into access to information law, but there's all these exceptions the government can use to not release information. And that's sort of where they've been going with this. And they've said that they can't find some of this stuff. And it's just a whole mess. And it really makes it look like the government's hiding something when in fact that data and that information might not really be all that interesting. It's one of the, you never know until you get that sheaf of documents on your desk and go through it. It could be a great story or it could be absolutely nothing.
Up next, is mining steel better for the environment than mining coal? Well, a couple in Alberta's Crow's Nest Pass think so, and they're advocating for it through the reopening of an abandoned mine. We have that right after the break. Welcome back. Over the past several years, we've heard a lot about the cons of coal mining, but are there some pros? My next guests share an interesting perspective. They are part of a group called Citizens Supportive of Crow's Nest Coal, and they're advocating for the reopening of the abandoned Grassy Mountain coal mine in the Crow's Nest Pass, but for the purpose of mining the much-needed commodity of steel. Take a look.
So we're a nonprofit organization that supports metallurgical coal mining in our area. We're made up of local citizens, and we think that with responsible mining and modern mining techniques that we can mine our resources responsibly and our town could benefit from it. So we live in the area. We love the area. We wouldn't want to see anything bad happen to it. My grandkids swim in the rivers, and so yeah, we're supportive. We think we can do it responsibly.
Okay, interesting. So I believe you want viewers to understand that you're not planning on developing a whole new coal mine, right? But rather just restarting an abandoned coal mine?
Right. Grassy Mountain was abandoned about 60 years ago, and it never ever did get reclaimed. So our hopes is we can mine what's left of the met coal there. Met coal is used for making steel. And if we can do that responsibly, it will actually get reclaimed.
Okay, well, I believe we have some drone footage of the actual abandoned coal mine, and I think that this might help viewers get a better idea of what the situation is out there, but maybe talk a little bit about Grassy Mine.
Yeah, so it's not pristine wilderness by no means. Like I say, it's an old coal mine, and it holds world class, some of the best metallurgical coal in the world, and if they mine it, the company that mines it is responsible for doing the reclamation, so it would get cleaned up, and then that land would become usable again.
Okay, and also this isn't a thermal coal mine for use for fuel, right? But a metallurgical coal, like you said, to be used to produce steel. So why is this an important difference, Carmen?
There's two completely different uses for metallurgical coal, or steel-making coal is what it's commonly referred to as, and thermal coal. Thermal coal is used for fuel. It's used for generating power. Metallurgical coal, as Carmen has stated, is used for making steel. And one of the biggest differences is that with thermal coal or energy producing coal. There's alternatives. There's natural gas, there's solar, there's wind power. For making steel, there really is no alternative. Metallurgical coal needs to be mixed with iron ore to create steel, and the demand for world steel is only going up, and the supply of metallurgical coal is going down. So you could see a problem coming. So we support this on those bases, and on the basis of the reclamation and the benefits to the community.
Mm-hmm. And there will certainly be obviously some questions raised as to what kind of impact it will have on the water supply and carbon emissions. So how would you address those concerns?
So the government sets the standards on what's allowable, and anything outside those standards gets shut down, right? So they have to mine it responsibly. And, today we're global leaders in resource extraction in Canada, in Alberta, right? So it's better, like Troy was saying, we need the met coal. It's better that we get it from here versus somewhere else where they don't have those environmental standards. I read an article the other day about kids mining coal in Iran. It's heartbreaking, right? When you think about that, and the need for the met coal is it's there. It's going to come from somewhere. So why don't we do it where we can do it responsibly?
So one angle that your website brings up is that our neighbors to the west, British Columbia, produce far, far more coal than Alberta does.
They sure do. They are blessed with high quality metallurgical coal as well. And the deposits are very similar, and it's one of the top 5 in the world. So it is a very high quality burning coal for making steel. And they're just on the other side of the continental divide here, and they can do it responsibly. And they've shown that. And of course, they're always improving technologies. And there's no reason why in Alberta we can't be benefiting from this as well.
Alberta hasn't always just been a place for mining, but also some unique discoveries. In fact, for years, it's been a world-renowned hotbed for the discovery of dinosaur bones. We dig into that next. When some people think of Alberta, it's not always just oil, gas, and the Rocky Mountains that come to mind. How about dinosaurs? The province has more than its fair share of reptilian bones, and if you've ever been to Drumheller, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And as the curator of dinosaurs at the renowned Royal Tyrrell Museum, Don Henderson has a unique perspective on the rich history of dinosaur discovery in Alberta. Here he is with where they are and what types they're still discovering.
We are the best place in the world for the horned dinosaurs, so things like Triceratops and its relatives. More than half of all the known kinds are from this province alone. We've got 5 kinds of tyrannosaur. We've got all sorts of duckbill dinosaurs. We've got armored dinosaurs. The things we don't have are the long-necked sauropods and the stegosaurs, the things with the plates on their backs. Our rocks are too young for stegosaurs, and our ancient environments weren't good for the giant sauropods. They were still around in the United States, but they never got this far north.
That's so interesting. So is there a particular, it's like basically, I'm just kind of wondering, is there a scientific reason behind the abundance of certain types of dinosaur fossils in Alberta?
I think it's so different types of animals prefer to live in different types of habitats. Some habitats are good for preserving things and others are terrible. Like you won't get things in the mountains. Things from deserts aren't very common. Things living right along the shore get bashed up by the waves and lost. But our dinosaurs seem to live on a broad plain to the east of the rising mountains. And it was a good place to be a dinosaur. There was lots of rivers, lots of water, lots of food. And when they died and got into the rivers, they had a really good chance of being buried in sands and muds and staying buried. So it's
hence all the discoveries.
Yeah, and also our climate. extreme freeze thaw, like right now, breaks up rock. Our flash, thunderstorms and really hard rain wear down the rocks. So our climate also really makes it possible to have all these dinosaurs being exposed so often. We can go back to a place like Dinosaur Park every summer and find new stuff that's constantly washing out.
So, what were some of the earliest dinosaur fossils found in Alberta, and who discovered them?
The earliest written report we have is from 1871. There was a missionary type guy, Jean Leroux. He was showing dinosaur bones by the Piegan tribe just north of Dinosaur Park. And then he didn't say what they were, he just said there were these big bones in the ground. And then in 1874, or was it 1870? No, 1873, when they were surveying the 49th parallel, they had their surveyors and the crews marking the border, but they also had a scientist, George Dawson, and he would leave the party and go and survey. And he found dinosaur bones, 1874, I think, near Comrie. He was the best person for the job because he was interested in everything: plants, animals, culture, like the natives, and the rocks and the fossils. So he was the first scientist to really see them. And then, not like a couple of years later, the Geological Survey of Canada started sending people across the West looking for resources like coal and minerals and stuff. And so their geologists, with their better educations, they started finding stuff like at Scabby Butte. Several people went there. And then Joseph Tyrrell found Tyrannosaur bones just near Drumheller in 1884.
Is Drumheller the most significant spot in the province to find it? I know there is a spot kind of down here in southern Alberta as well, like close to the border. But
I think the best place is Dinosaur Provincial Park, just north of Brooks. So that's where we get the most. We do have lots of bone up here, but they always tend to be broken up and not as good quality. There are lots of dinosaurs here, but it's very rare to find good ones. And I think when the first professional collectors came through here just over 100 years ago, they skimmed all the good stuff. And now we have to wait a few hundred years for erosion to expose it. But I think if you're going to go anywhere to look, Dinosaur Provincial Park is the best. But it's a protected area, so not just anybody can go in.
Well, still to come, it is a very special weekend. So we talk about the importance of mom as we head into her special day. We'll be right back.